Welcome to Furious Driving, and today I'm driving a Mercedes CLK, but not just any old CLK. This isn't the 1.8 compressor, no! This is the 500 with the 5 litre V8 in it. Ooh, this is a little bit different and a lot bit better. Now a quick word from our sponsors while you hit like and subscribe, most important. Now on with the review. Furious Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the Furious fleet and for yours with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description below. Now this, the second generation CLK, the W209, came out in 2002. It replaced the previous generation, which is obviously the Mark 1. Totally different car, entirely different platform, based on the W202 C-Class. This though was based on the W203, which came out in 2000, an all new platform, completely reworked and revamped and revised in every way you can possibly think of. So, 2 years later, the coupe arrived, which is this. It's an elegant, pretty stylish thing with lots of little expensive features. This particular car was quite a high-end one. They ran from a 1.8 litre 4-cylinder all the way up to a ridiculous fire-breathing 6.2 AMG black. And the difference in 0 to 60 and top speed times and trim levels is quite exciting and interesting. Very, very varied indeed. This though fits towards the top end of the range. It's got the 5 litre M113 V8 in it. And that meant it had 306 horsepower and 350 Newton meters of torque, which is, well, it's plenty, frankly, isn't it? It throws the car at the scenery in a breathtaking 6 seconds, and it feels just so refined while it does it. You have this wonderful V8 burble chugging away in front of you, but at the same time, the car feels very, very quiet and comfortable and grown up, and not like it's a fire-breathing animal at all. It's quite interesting, really. Pickup isn't bad, has to be said. And it doesn't do too badly sticking to the corners. However, being a Mercedes of the early noughties, it is very much more a fast cruiser rather than an all-out sports car. Jumping quickly back into the car, you'll notice these incredible little seatbelt helpers that pass through your seatbelt when you start the engine up. I think it's very much for the American market, but a lot of this car really was. Now, as I say, this car is very much on the high end of the price spectrum. And the price point for this car with no accessories in 2003 was £45,000, which makes it something like a 90 grand car in today's money. Handling wise, it's very, very smooth, it's very, very competent, it makes you feel relaxed. It can go very quickly indeed. It's limited to 155 miles an hour, which is, well, more than anyone can need, probably. Apart from me, I'd like it to go faster. But bear in mind, it was going up against opposition like the E46 BMW, which is very much a driver's car. This is very much more going quickly but in comfort car. To that end, the engineering is very much about comfort, quiet ride, a composed ride really. The suspension is relatively soft. It is hard enough that you can chuck it through a corner, but it doesn't reward you in the same way that an E46 will. But the interior is probably a bit nicer. You've got your nice bits of metal, haven't you? Let's have a quick pull over and look around the interior and see what you think about this thing. Right, let's take a quick look around the exterior of the car. Now this thing is notably a pillarless coupe, or a pillarless coupe, if you will. So with the full 4 buttons pushed, this will drop itself elegantly down into the doors, leaving you open to the wind, the elements, and the joy of the sunshine. We have also got the early days of the touch locking systems. This is 2003, so this is very embryonic. But what we also have on this car, rather beautifully, in a nod to the R129s, and SLs and things of days of yore, we've got this lovely chrome patch here on the back of the door, which makes it feel very, very premium, and this is what you buy a Mercedes for, especially one at this kind of price point. Now on this door we have got some very nicely slightly ruched grey leather. There was another level of ruching available. If you're into the Zeno level of the Italian fine leather, it was even more ruched. The ruching could actually lose small children in it. This is just a more respectable, sensible level. But also, being 2003, we've now got door side impact airbags as well, so very exciting modern crash protection technology. Also a big thing, and this first came out in the bigger Mercedes, we've got the door mounted seat controls. So we've even got memory seats, and we've got even moving headrests as well. So that is about as swank as it gets really, isn't it? Moving down slightly fairly sturdy, but of course it's sturdy, it's a Mercedes door handle, and we've got 4 electric windows, as we just said, and a popper for the boot, and of course a decent sized little cubby hole. And it's a lovely curvy geometric style. Think of a Ford KA, but orders of magnitude posher. And this surface, which looks like it's going to be fake metal, is actually real metal, because we're in the avant-garde, and the avant-garde trim was the sporty, stylish, contemporary look. There was also the posher wood-faced look, if you prefer. Climbing inside, it's quite a high seat for a sports car, I think. We have got quite the elegant T-shelf area. This is very good T-shelfery actually. It's not perfect because there is a curve, so your cups will potentially slide off into your lap, and there's a handy drain groove at the back, like a drip tray on a pub, so if it does fall off, it will go out the side rather than onto your knees. But if it falls this way, you've got problems. Plenty of room for all your snacking inquiries. Now there is one extra little detail up here which we'll mention. This is the parking sensors are up here on top of the dashboard. So your distances going from yellow to red to crunched are up there in your eye line, which is an interesting place to put it, above this air vent. Speaking of air vents, this is quite an interesting design with the 2 circles and the interlocking centre all sort of matched by the nice little chrome outer ring. And unusually we've got 4 separate little dials, for obviously for the airflow for the left and the right. We've got a temperature wheel, so a bit like on a Rover for the 2 centre face vents, you can go for cold air only. But curiously, this is one I've not seen before. You've got the choice of left or right preference as far as I can see on this one. How curious. And those are mirrored by the additional little ship's porthole air vents on the side. Back in the middle of the car, we've got more of this textured, almost perforated metal all around the dashboard. Unfortunately, this does make the plastics look a little bit more plasticky. But this is a sign of the times. But what is good, if you look at all this, the number of buttons, everything has a button and on a function. But if you look at so many modern cars, all the buttons have disappeared, everything's on one big screen. Here the screen isn't that big. There's a separate screen for the heating and ventilation, and everything has its own individual control, which is absolutely fantastic. So in the dark you can find stuff, you don't have to take your eyes off the road, you just know exactly where stuff is. Brilliant. Well done Mercedes, well done the early noughties in general for being fantastic for this kind of thing. Looking at these buttons, you can tell this was a very expensive car, because as well as the rear headrest flipping button and ESP off, which shows we've got ESP, and parking sensors off, which shows we've got parking sensors, we've got a rear blind as well, so we can flip up a rear blind if it's a little bit too bright or warm in the back of the car. We do of course have dual zone, I assume this is climate control as well. Over to the left we do have a magnificently wide handle on the glove box, which is a little tricky to shut again. We've got a pen holder because we're posh. We've got a CD holder because we're posh. And then you've got a double layer thing, so we can put small items that don't want to get lost in there. We've got bigger items in the bottom. We've even got an aux input over on the left hand side. Now when I had my W204 C-Class estate, every time I mentioned anything about not having an aux input, people would comment, just look in the left hand side of your glove box, it's there. And trust me, it wasn't. I even took the side of the glove box off to looking for the wiring to see if I could wire one in retrospectively. You couldn't. Now, so moving across to the instrument binnacle, where the dashboard is beautiful. Mercedes do an elegant dashboard better than almost anyone. They're both clear, legible, and just look so, I don't know, I'd hate to say posh or upmarket, but they kind of do. There's the choice of fonts. It's the minimalism and the restraint as much as anything they put into it. So we've got an analog clock on the left, because analog is nice. We've got our speedometer on the right, which goes up to 160. The car is limited to 155, so anything beyond that is pointless unless you're somehow removing that limit. It will go faster, I am sure. But this is one of the earliest cars to do this. We've got an LCD screen in the centre of the speedometer, so we can have a digital readout of the speed amongst other various things. This car shows 153,000 miles on it, and honestly it does not look like it's got that kind of mileage on it at all. And over to the right we've got a rev counter, and each of these things have got little warning lights in them, and quite curiously we've got these LCD graphs for the fuel and for the temperature on the left and the right, which I've not seen anything quite exactly like that before. It's quite nicely done. It looks quite modern for the early noughties, and it's actually held up quite well, as a lot of sort of very contemporary things don't really last too well. This one actually has done quite reasonably well. Moving back from there, we have on the left hand side, in its traditional Mercedes position, we've got our cruise control stalk, which is above our indicators, wipers and everything else stalk, because Mercedes do tend to do this. They haven't, though, gone as far as putting the transmission on the stalk, which is something they do quite a lot as well. The steering wheel itself is a chunky leather thing, feels very nice in your hand. It's only slightly soft and padded under a quite hard leather, which does feel very nice indeed. We've got lots of buttons, again, chunky big plastic buttons, quite an American feel to them, I would say. Airbag, 3-pointed start, and the horn test. Wow, that's a Germanic golfing parp, because this is definitely a golfer's car. Again, in the traditional position of Mercedes-Benz's time immoral, I'll go with that. We've got the headlight switches down here on the right hand side, auto lights as well, early noughties. Headlamp wipers on their own button, now that's a curiosity, and the mirror's not on the door but on this as well. And because it's a Mercedes, we've got a foot operated handbrake with the parking brake release down here. Also, in the centre we've also got a metal topped ashtray with a 12-volt socket in there, and we've got our 5-speed automatic gearbox with comfort and sport settings, and that's a little bit loose. Behind that we have got a lovely big lockable storage bin.
More broken plastic.
With more broken plastic. Now, lockable stuff and security is quite a thing with this car, and I'll show you some more of that in a moment. But up above us we have got quite an adventurous little light cluster in the ceiling, and we have got a fairly decent sized sunroof as well. Behind us, enjoying, or revelling I should say, in the open air freshness of the full drop down pillarlessness, we have got lovely two-tone black and grey leather seats, which are actually fairly sizable. There's room for actual adults in the back there, and they've got a curious little arrangement. There's an armrest, but there's also a little tray in the centre as well, so that's kind of fun, isn't it? Stepping out, I will take a moment to just quickly enjoy these seats. Quite hard two-tone leather with the perforated grey in the middle. It does look very good. It's very early noughties in its style, but it has held up. It's not extravagant enough to now look sort of silly or pastiche. It just looks nice. This car does have a crazy amount of automation for a car from 20 odd years ago, as well as the seatbelt helpers which pop out the seatbelt to make it easier to grasp and put on. We've got the automated rear blinds, we've got the automated rear headrests, and we've even got drop-down headrests, so as you roll the front seat forward, it puts the headrest down so that it folds forward far enough to get into, which is very clever. Now, moving into the back of the car, as I said we would, the boot on this thing, because it is based on the C-Class saloon, the boot is absolutely magnificent. This is going to hold several bags of golf clubs without too much difficulty. Now, you might be wondering why the spare wheel is on top of the carpet in this car. That's because it's had LPG fitted, so that's on top of the carpet. It means it gets a fantastically more miles per gallon for a lot less pennies. But there's security. We mentioned security. This is something I had never seen before. This was a £240 option with these extra little grips up in the boot lid, so mega security. So if you really don't want your golf clubs to get stolen, you opt for this when you buy the car. Right, let's get back on. So back on the road again, enjoying it some more. The thing is, that noise of the engine, it just is intoxicating. The MPG isn't that bad. It's low 30s for a lot of the time if you're driving carefully, and on a cruise on the motorway it'll be sitting at around 2,000 RPM. At 40 miles an hour right now, it's sitting at, what, 1,200 RPM? It's doing nothing. The engine's barely even on. The problem is, of course, that you just want it to do this all of the time. Which isn't great for your MPG, but it makes you smile. I know an electric car would do that equally as well, but you might as well not be there. The noise just isn't part of it, and the experience is so different. A V8 doing that is a guaranteed grin machine. So this is a car that's probably bought by someone a little older who definitely went to play golf. It's sat between the SLK, which is a small, cute, fun sports car, which maybe you bought the secretary you're having an affair with. Then above that there was the CL, which was a bit more of a grown-up Grand Tourer, which is if you're, I guess, a director of a company who wants a big car to go and turn up in the company car park with. This one, I'm not quite sure what the niche is for this one precisely. This is an older gentleman, maybe the retired director who goes golfing a few times a week, because it's big enough for your golf clubs, but it's also big enough to be showing you're an important person, but at the same time, It's small enough and economical enough as far as 5-litre V8s go to not be a burden on your now restricted finances that you've taken early retirement and you're just living off your many ISAs and bonds and gilts and so forth. But Mercedes really have always been the masters of filling the niche, and BMW have kind of stepped into that void a little bit as Mercedes have scaled back some of their eccentricities, but they've done so many versions. No other manufacturer in the early noughties was doing 3 sizes of coupe. And Ford had the Puma, and they killed that one unfortunately, and they brought it back as something that's not a Puma. Vauxhall, well, the Calibra was gone, the Tomcat was gone. BMW 6 Series, I guess that was kind of an arrival, I suppose, but that was a bit later on, wasn't it, really, towards the end of the production, because this thing ran until 2010, but only with this engine until 2006. Right, I'm going to change the GoPros one more time, but this is purely for me to enjoy the acceleration, not because I need more ankles.
Absolutely.
Now, externally, the car is pure early noughties curvaceousness. You look at the fluted bonnet, which is just classic Mercedes, almost classic Jaguar in a way. The double yoke fried egg thing was a bit of a hit and miss design. Some people loved it, a lot of people didn't. It's a bit like the 996 Porsches. People really didn't take to them at all. And obviously you'll notice in the later cars, they changed it again to separate from that style. But it's a very elegant, very swooping curving thing, perhaps even better looking than the current generation of C-Class. Underneath we've got 3-link front suspension, aluminium multi-link suspension, and we've got ourselves a 5-speed automatic, which has a curious left and right motion for changing gear manually. So you can override it, drop a gear, still a bit of a lag, but can... Curious. It's very confusing, it's left and right rather than up and down. Very non-intuitive, but there you go, it's a thing. By the way, this car is actually for sale. My friend Adam bought it a little while ago. He now has got less drive space than he used to have. He has to get rid of it. In the description below, pop a message down to that if it tickles your fancy. This thing is very comfortable indeed. It really does hide its miles well. 153,000 miles in this thing, and it drives without a squeak or rattle anywhere. Really is quite a remarkable car. So here we have it, the CLK 500. Not an AMG, but it almost should be, shouldn't it? If you've enjoyed this video, please as always hit like and subscribe and join us again next time driving something completely different.